Thank you.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's session. My name is Josh Brothheim. I'm going to be leading today's training. I'm based out of the United States, and it's was a Wednesday evening here, but have a couple of people I want to introduce that are going to be helping me along the way. So one thing, a couple slides here. And Ashant, do you or not, do you want to go ahead and speak here, or do you want me to just run through this stuff?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Josh. For some reason, I am not able to put on my video, but that's okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Anant Deshpande. I am the country manager for Sumo Logic in India and SAARC, and it's great to be here. Before we start off, I just want to extend, on behalf of my entire team in India as well as globally, and thanks, Josh, for coming onto this training at a not so friendly time. So we're going to make it up to you. But I just want to say thank you to all the participants here, for taking time to come and take this certification. So while we have a great session lined up for you, I just thought I'll set the context and kick this off by referencing a couple of conversations which I've been having with some of our customers. Okay, so when I speak to just the last week, I was speaking to the CEO of a large company, an IT company based out of Pune. And I asked him, what are the two most valuable assets, for your organization? And without a single minute of hesitation or a single moment of hesitation, what he said is that my most important assets today are my people and my data. These are the two most important things for me today in my organization. It's not technology. It's not applications. It is not cash at bank. It is not our balance sheet. It is our people and it is our data, because that's really the lever which we are using to drive anything and everything in our organization, including competitive intensity, including innovation, et cetera, right? And if I break that down to why is that relevant to today's session, I mean, I think all of you know the fact, and probably some of you are facing these challenges, that there is so much of data that is coming out at us, and that data is increasing exponentially, day by day, week by week, month by month. And the interesting thing is that a lot of that data is coming to us in a continuous format, which means that you are thrown at terabytes and megabytes and gigabytes, or whatever you may call it, of data that is being thrown to you on a real-time basis. And what that means for the business is that based on that data, the business has to take decisions which are right for the business. And that's not something which is easy to do. So our aim really at Sumo Logic is to help our customers instrument, visualize that data, and make sure that whenever they have a decision to take, we have the right decision-making support in terms of analytics that is provided back to those customers. And within the Sumo Logic platform, and we will talk about this over the next couple of days, whether it's querying complex operators, whether it is putting in search operations, etc., there's a lot that we're doing to help you make your job easier so that you can deliver value back to your business. And not just that, also progress professionally in terms of achieving your own professional goals. In fact, over the last 1 year itself, we have trained hundreds of customers in India itself and globally, of course. And there's a lot of initiative on that. So, once again, without taking too much time, welcome to this training. I hope you enjoy the training and do give us your feedback in terms of how we can make this better going forward. So with that, back to you, Josh. Thank you.
Josh, you are on mute. We can hear you.
Thank you, Punam. Wanted to introduce myself and a few others that are going to help me, and we're certainly going to start things right now. But the first thing we want to remind you of is the certification that we're about to take or go through. So what we're doing today is we're going to be going through our fundamentals class, and we're going to be taking a certification exam at the end. And we'll talk about the exam later. Don't worry about it. Don't get stressed about it. But what we find is that as I was saying, we have data prove all this is actually regarding usage of the system. So we find as users take these certifications, they use Sumo more, they use more of the complex operators, they get more out of Sumo. And so that's what we're going to help you with today and tomorrow, is getting more out of Sumo to get more out of your data and get more out of your business and all those kind of good things. Let's see, a couple more intro slides. Who's here today? So we have a wide variety of both individuals and locations. 28 cities are represented today, 42 different companies. And primarily you guys are in the DevOps security world. If you're not, that's fine. You'll still benefit from today and tomorrow. But this seems to be primarily who's registered for today. I want to thank a couple people here, both Anant and Justin. They are going to be helping a little bit today. They're also kind of more your sales individuals to get in touch with. But I also have some helpers with me today. And so I'm going to be doing the training, of course, but I have Suresh and Poonam with me. And so throughout today's session and tomorrow's as well, if there's any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat or the Q&A. Actually, the Q&A is best for questions, and they'll go ahead and try and assist with them during class. So certainly, if it's related to the material, or if it's not, that's fine as well. So please use that chat and Q&A to communicate it with us and make today somewhat interactive. The agenda for today, well, we're started already, and this is pretty much it. So what we're going to do for the next hour is, well, it says fundamentals presentation. I don't know that it will take a full hour, but the big part of it is. We'll have a break, and then we'll do some more content and take that certification. The content we'll go through, and I'll have a better agenda shortly, is going to be 2 hours of material. So we're going to go through some presentation, but we're going to be doing some hands-on labs, which I think you'll enjoy. So we'll actually log into the system and do some stuff. And so I know you'll enjoy that more than just slides. Let's see, anything else in here? And that's day 2. So they'll be back with us tomorrow. But let me go get into the deck that I want to use, and let's go ahead and start here. And there we go. So the class we're doing today is fundamentals, as mentioned. So this is the basics of Sumo Logic. Tomorrow, what we're going to be doing is Cloud Sim, which is our, well, you'll see tomorrow, our one of our new features, our new tools. And so that's another training that I think you'll enjoy as well. Also interactive. For the agenda, this is pretty accurate. So we're going to start with an overview of Sumo Logic, which I guess we kind of started already a little bit. Then I'm going to walk through a quick demo. And the demo, I think, will be useful for a real use case to get a feel of how Sumo can help. And then we're going to do those hands-on labs. So very quickly after, we're going to get into the system together, and I'm going to give you a tour, if you will, and we're going to look at, as it says here, the data that's been collected, doing some basic searching and analyzing of that data, doing some basic trending and monitoring features, and then looking at dashboards and creating alerts and why those are helpful. And then we'll take that exam. So once again, we have an hour set aside at the end for the exam. We'll talk about it in more detail a little bit later. As a reminder, so this is a new feature that we started actually for India. Just today is the first day of it. So we want to reward you for attending today. As described earlier, of course, there's benefits in learning and gaining new knowledge and, all that. And we appreciate your time that you're spending with us. And typically, I would not be doing this at a weird hour. I would actually probably be in country and then visiting with you guys if things were more normal. But unfortunately, I can't be there, and normally we'd host the big thing, and so we can't really do that right now. But we still wanted to reward you, and we wanted to maybe motivate you as well. And so what we're doing is, if you take this certification later, and we'll talk about it later, and then send us a copy of your certificate, we'll send you a $10 Swiggy voucher. The $10 USD, so the equivalent of 760 or so rupees. And so I encourage you to take advantage of that. We're going to be doing another class tomorrow with another exam and certification, and so you can take advantage of that as well. So certainly for the next 2 days, we want to feed you, if you will. So please do that, and I'll remind you about that when we get closer as well. So let's talk about Sumo Logic a little bit. Now, I'm not intending to sell you on Sumo Logic. You've you or your companies have already kind of bought into Sumo Logic. So, this is not a sales pitch, but I do think it's important for us to explain kind of who we are and where we fit in. And if you know who we are, great, all the better, but just a quick kind of little overview. And so basically Sumo Logic can help with, as described earlier, data. You bring us your logs, you bring us your metrics, your traces, your other forms of data, and bringing it into Sumo Logic's continuous intelligence platform is going to allow you to analyze that data and analyze it in a variety of different ways. And at the top, I have 4 kind of dashboard pictures of examples, but there's many more. So operational intelligence, do you want to know that your systems are up and running? What is your MTTI, MTTR? Those important metrics and milestones regarding operations. Sumo Logic is great at showing you about that. Similarly, security. If you're interested more in looking at security incidences and seeing, has somebody logged into your system multiple times from the same IP address in a period of time, or has somebody logged in from different parts of the world, other things like that, the data is going to show you that, and using Sumo can help bring that to the forefront and give you that important information and investigative information. Business intelligence. Using Sumo to look at sales information. Are you trying to sell an item on a website? Are people buying it? Are they returning it? All these different metrics and data that's associated with just business information can be viewed quite easily through Sumo. And then global intelligence. How is your company doing compared to other companies around the world in various metrics and milestones? Now, what data needs to be brought into Sumo Logic for us to help you with it, or for you to help yourselves? Well, your data, and whatever your data consists of. Your data might consist of, as we show here, data that's being generated by apps, data that's being generated by microservices, cloud system data, SaaS data, mobile device data, etc. All this data that your company or your organization is dealing with, you basically bring into Sumo Logic and we help you with it. And we'll talk about that in a bit more detail of how to get it into Sumo Logic, but that's basically it. You bring the data in. Once the data is in Sumo Logic, then you can start to use our analytics to help you sort through that stuff. Our environments are multi-tenant, they're scalable, they're elastic, we have built-in machine learning, APIs, advanced analytics, some security and monitoring features. A lot of these we won't actually talk about today, just because they're a little more advanced, but they exist within Sumo and are quite easy to utilize. On the far right of the screen, I'm showing here are some of our certifications. So some of these are more US centric, but they're all important to somebody. And so we have many of the compliance standards. HIPAA is an important US one, FedRAMP, US government, and certainly more localized registrations or certifications we have as well. But these are some of the highlights. And then ultimately, who can benefit from Sumo Logic? Well, fortunately, everybody in your organization can. Your DevOps, your engineering, your IT ops. And so even though I mentioned earlier that there were a lot of, I think there were a lot of DevOps and security folks here today, anybody can benefit from Sumo. And fortunately, we're now going to show you how to use it. And now I'm actually going to go through a demo. So I'm going to come back to this slide. This slide is going to represent the demo I'm about to do, but let's do that demo. Let's take a look at it. So let me go ahead and let me just reformat my screen size a little bit here. And let me take a look at that. Okay. So for this demo, actually, let me just make sure one thing is still loaded. Okay, we'll get into these dashboards in a second, so ignore that for just a moment. What I want to show is this page, though. What this page is our use case for the next, 10 minutes or so. Our use case is based around a company called Travel Logic. We're Sumo Logic, this company is Travel Logic. And for today, we want to consider this company to be a production company in a production environment, and this company is making money and things are good. And the way this company works or functions is like other travel websites where you can book hotels and book airfare and it will give you the best rates and you can compare them. And I think we've all used sites like that, maybe not as much recently with traveling, but certainly in the past we've used those, and internationally they're all kind of the same. And so this site is, like I said, up and running, and we're getting a percentage of each ticket booked. We get, 5% or whatever, and things are going okay. Well, let's pretend things aren't going okay all of a sudden. What I want you to pretend, or not even pretend, is look at this message I got in my Slack. What this message is saying is Sumo Logic alert gateway response time outlier. Now, hopefully I know what a gateway response time outlier means if I'm getting alerted about it. But even if I don't, the system is letting me know that there's something not quite right. There's something with the gateway response time that's abnormal or weird. And so that I know that, or I've received this information. And at the same time, my manager calls me and he or she says, Josh, I hear people are having problems checking out of the Travelogic website. Well, if they can't check out of that website, that means they can't book their hotels. And so it's a bad business experience. It's a bad customer service experience. And it's not good. It's a problem. And so my job is now to figure out what has gone wrong and how to fix it. And this is all the information I have is really a message from my manager and a message from Slack. So how can I take what I am hearing kind of secondhand and dig into that? Well, fortunately, this is where Sumo Logic is going to help me. What I have here is I've just preloaded these, but these are some dashboards that I or somebody in my organization has created. And what they're based on is Travelogic, an operational overview. And so what this dashboard is showing us is different things or operational services that are part of our environment and the status of them. Now, hopefully I know what these things are if I'm looking at them, but even if I don't, what we've created is a very simple color scheme. Green is good and red is bad. So here I see green, I see reporting nodes, I see VPC network rejects, I see product services in green. And once again, hopefully I know what those are, but even if I don't, green is usually good, and so good. But what I see here in red is both interesting and concerning. What I see here is the checkout service over the last 60 minutes has had about 3,000 errors. Well, I know people can't check out, or I've been told people can't check out. And now it looks like I have a little evidence that over the past hour, 3,000 people, or at least potential checkouts could not work or got errors as a result. That's good to know. It's not good that it happened, but it's good to know. What I want to do is now go in and dig a little bit deeper. And so what I'm going to do is click on this checkout service. I've actually just pre-opened it. Rerun it again here. Should. Let's see, wasn't it? There we go, being a little sluggish. And so what I have here in the services detail are exactly that, details about other services related to Travelogic. And so what I want to do is look at these, some of these right now. The times, I apologize, they're on West Coast United States time, so they are actually yesterday, but they still illustrate what's going on here. And so what we see here, well, what do we see here going on? So for example, in this top one here is our bookings. So this is showing the metrics of bookings, successful bookings and failed bookings. And what I want to do is I want to look at the middle portion first. The left part I'm going to ignore just because this is development data. It's reproducing it. It's replicating again. So I just want to use kind of this 8 o'clock time as the start here. And what I see here at about 8 o'clock or so is green, representing successful bookings. I also see that at 7:50 and 7:40. So what I'm seeing here is people are booking, they're getting vacations, getting holidays, happy travelers, booking, booking, booking. And then what I see at about 8:15 is a decrease in green, meaning a drop in successful bookings. At the same time, I see this orange starting to peak up, which is representing failed bookings. So what this is showing me is about 8:15 or so local time, successful bookings dropped and failed bookings occurred. Well, that's the time frame when I've been told people are having problems, and so that corresponds to the information I've received. It's not good, once again, to see this. It's helpful to see this. I don't want to ever see failed bookings, but now I'm getting evidence that these are occurring. Let's take a look at another panel here. This one is the errors over the last 7 days. So what this is showing for the last 60 minutes, so about 7:30 to 8:30 local time, it's showing errors that occurred today. It's showing errors that occurred yesterday. It's also showing errors that occurred 4 days ago. And so this is giving me the ability to kind of see things that are normal or not. What this is showing me is, for example, at 7:40, it's showing me both today and yesterday and 4 days ago, there were not many errors. There were a couple, there were 6 or 8 errors, but not too many. Fast forward a little bit, there's still a couple errors here and there today, but not many. But what I see here about 8:15 again is a spike in errors. It goes from 9 errors to 321 in 1 minute. And so this spike is letting me know, hey, we didn't have a spike yesterday. We didn't have a spike 4 days ago, but today we do. And this is kind of weird. A couple more charts here. Let's use this one. This one is errors by node. We'll talk about nodes and source names a little bit later, but basically what it's showing me is errors. And if I put my mouse over them, I start to see some information about the source name. And so here it's saying travel-checkout. And so this is letting me know that checkout is generating errors. So what I'm getting is a lot of the same information. It's starting to get a little repetitive, but repetitive in a good way, that these errors are occurring, they're causing problems. And I know kind of a time frame as well. It's kind of about 8:15 or so. A few more charts here. Here is CPU and total memory. And so what this is are the metrics related to CPU and total memory. And what we see here is, once again, about 7:50, 8 o'clock, there's things going on. If I kind of get out, that view, you can kind of see all the colors, but they're all at least pretty flat. And so what I see once again at about 8:15 or so is I start to see the spike. And so now I'm starting to see a spike of CPU and total memory usage. And so why is my memory usage going up at 8:15? At about the same time, my errors are increasing. Is there some correlation between memory usage and errors? Well, maybe, but we're going to dig into that and figure that out. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and look at that one right now. I'm going to drill into this one. And what it's showing me once again is in the middle portion here, these lines are representing the metrics related to CPU and memory usage. At the very top of the screen, I'm introducing my logs. So at the center of the screen are metrics. At the top of the screen in this white and orange bar are my logs. And what they're utilizing is this query line right here. What this query line is saying is look at the logs for the last 60 minutes and look for the logs that have the word error or exception in them. So look for those logs that have errors in them. And at the very top of the screen, the system does this automatically, but it's going to break this data into 1 minute chunks. And it's going to show us how many errors we had during that 1 minute chunk. So what I see here at 8 o'clock is the bar is white, meaning there are no errors at 8 o'clock. At 8:05, there's no errors. 8:10, there's no errors. There's also no spiking yet. But what I see here at 8:15, or really more specifically 8:16, is I see the spike in the CPU and the metrics. So memory usage is going wacky. And I'm starting to see errors in our logs. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to drill into these logs. I want to investigate these logs because these logs should give me an indication of why things are going wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and select one of these 1 minute periods and drill into them. And so now what I'm doing is I'm utilizing our logs interface, or our logs interface is a good way to describe it. So what I'm now doing is the same thing I was doing earlier, is I'm looking at a 1 minute period for errors or exceptions. And I see 223 messages. Down here is each message. And each message that has the word error in it, or the string of error, not necessarily a word, is going to be highlighted. So log message 1, here's the word error, and here's the message. Log message 2 has the word error, and here's the message, and so on and so forth. Now, if I start to look at these log messages, I'm going to get an indication of what may have gone wrong, not necessarily what has gone wrong, but what may have gone wrong. And so if I look at the very first log message here, I see error checkout.charge, bad handshake, error SSL routine, SSL3 gets server certificate verify failed. I also see an error occurred here when calling the put object operation, and some other errors, excuse me. And like I said, 223 of them. Now, what I want to do here is I want to modify my log search. I want to modify it in a few different ways. The first way is I don't want to look at just when right now I'm looking at a 1 minute period of time where things were bad and I know they were bad. What I want to do is open this search up, and I want to look at the last 60 minutes because I know things were good as well as bad in the last 60 minutes, and I want to see all of that in my logs. I want a wider picture of what's going on. So I'm going to say select last 60 minutes. I'm also now going to remove looking for just the word error or exception, because I don't want to just look for errors or exceptions. I want to look at more of the data. I want to look at all the data. And so I'm going to remove those words, or like I said, strings. And I'm going to hit enter or search. And so now what I'm saying is look at all my checkout data from the last 60 minutes. And when I do, I get just about 25,000 log messages. 991 pages, 25 per page. Now within these 24,000 log messages should be an indication of what went wrong, and it's now my job to find it. Now, how do I find possibly a singular message or a singular event that has occurred out of 24,000 records? Well, this is a challenge. It's a very big challenge. Now, I could manually go through each record and look for that unique event, because I'm looking, like I said, for a unique event that triggered all these errors, triggered this spike in CPU and memory usage. And so I could actually go through each error message or log message at this point and say, okay, is this related to my error? Not really. Is this related to my error? Not really. And I could go through each one, but that would be silly. It would be a waste of time. What I want to do here is use a feature that we call log reduce. And this is a really helpful feature in Sumo Logic. When I click log reduce, what is going to happen is the system is going to take those 24,000 log messages and look at each one essentially and group them together in patterns. It's starting to do it now. It will take about 5 or maybe 10, 15 seconds at the most. But it's now starting to look at all those unique messages and, like I said, group them together. And it should be done. I think it's just about done there. It's done now. So what it's done is it's grouped these messages. So let's look at how it's done, how it has done the grouping. So for example, the first log message, it found 11,000 or just about 12,000 versions of this log message. And the pattern it found is very similar to the pattern we see right here. Now this message is indicative of a portion of a checkout or a transaction that's taken place. We have the charge, we have the message, we have the payment gateway, we have the transaction ID. And so we see 11,000. These are really good messages. We want to see those messages. And remember, we're looking at a 60-minute period of time where things were good and bad, so we'd expect to see good stuff. Same with line 2 and line 3. These are just messages that are part of the checkout process, and so we'd expect to see them. Let's go a little bit lower though. In line 5, what I see are 875 messages with that get server certificate, certificate verified failed, bad handshake, that error message that I pointed out earlier that I think is related. Let's keep going even further. I see 795 of these error occurred. These were the ones related to that put object operation. Now, it's really nice that I'm seeing 800 or 11,000 messages grouped together, but I'm looking for a more singular event. I'm looking for a needle in the haystack, an event that happened, and as a result, messed up the memory usage and killed the server certificates and all that. So how do I find that event through here? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my count and just flip it upside down. Rather than looking at those messages that are most commonly grouped together, show me those messages that are more unique. So I'm going to just take the count, flip it upside down. And what I see here are a bunch of messages. But the message I want to show, let me see if I can find it real fast. It should pop out here. Let's see. Where is it? Here it is. Sorry. It's right here on this line. So this line right here gives me a good indication of what has gone wrong or what has occurred. And so let's look at it. What happened here? So over the past hour, this log message occurred. What this message says is Travelogic app. Travelogic app starting cluster, Prod 08. So that's just the production environment we're using for our Travelogic app. The service checkout. So the checkout service is starting. Version 1.14 dev. Well, why was development code loaded in a production environment? Oh, somebody made a mistake and they promoted the wrong version of code, which messed up the server certificates. And as a result, people could not check out. And so that's kind of is an example of how we could use Sumo Logic. And what we've done here, I didn't point this out earlier intentionally, but what I've done here is, imagining this is a common issue, is I've created in our dashboard deployed versions. And what I see here is normally we would be deploying 1.98, but here that wrong version of code got deployed at 8.16 and messed everything up. So let's talk about that demonstration a little bit more. In that demonstration, I was trying to show three portions of Sumo Logic. The first are the alerts, which are going to, as it says, notify you of a critical event. The alerts can be set up in many different ways, and we'll talk about some of those ways actually a little bit more towards the end, but the alerts can be via email. They can be via Slack, like you saw on my Slack. They can be utilizing the dashboard. You can imagine this dashboard, where's this dashboard, is sitting in a big command center or a knock center or just on a big TV, and somebody walking by, even if they don't know about database issues and VPC network rejects, if this is all green, that means everything is good. If there's red on it, that means things are not good and somebody needs to look into that. And so this can give you that that ability to know that something isn't quite right, just by not without even have to without doing a query. So just being alerted. And like I said, we'll talk about those alerts a little bit later. We then used the metrics to identify what was going on, and what was going on was the drop in successful bookings, the increase in failed bookings, and more importantly, the CPU usage and memory usage. Those were spiking. And so what was going on? That was what's going on. Now, why it was happening, that's where we used the logs, and the log showed us why it was happening was due to just bad code being promoted. And so that's how someone can help you. So that was a pretty good demo, I hope. Or it was a good demo. I like it, but I hope it came across as well. Here, let's keep going here. So as mentioned, if there's questions, Suresh is gonna handle the chat and the Q&A, but I'm gonna keep going here. Sumo Logic data flow. This is an important slide as well. These are the 3 steps to data flow in Sumo Logic. The first step is data collection, and we're going to talk about each one of these today, but we're going to really, well, we're going to be doing an overview on each one today. We could go very deep into each one, and our other classes do that, but for today, this is the fundamentals, the basics. And step 1 is about data collection. So as I described a little bit earlier, your data is being generated out there in the world. It might be generated in the cloud. It might be in servers. It might be apps, microservices. Your data is out there. And in order for Sumo Logic to help you with that data, the data needs to be collected and brought into Sumo Logic. And that's what data collection is all about. We're going to talk about it a little bit more today. I have a few more slides about it, but we're not going to go too deep into it once again, just since it's a basics course. But after step 1, your data is now in Sumo Logic. However you got it there, and we'll talk about this option shortly, it's now in Sumo Logic, essentially kind of just sitting there, waiting for instructions. And there's very simple ways for you to give it instructions, but that's really what it's waiting for. And that's where the operators come in, where you're going to start to use the query language to slice and dice your data and bring back what you want. And we'll talk about that a little bit today. Using the charts, certainly using the operators and looking at the raw logs like I was starting to do are quite helpful. But maybe you want to visualize, and we'll talk about visualizing in a second, but maybe looking at a chart is more helpful. Seeing a bar graph, a line chart, a pie chart, whatever visual representation, it might be more helpful than just raw data. And then the visualizing monitoring is of taking that data and turning it into dashboards, turning it into alerts. And that's really where a lot of the power in Sumo is setting those up so that you can just rely on the alerts and dashboards and then do what you need to do. So while of course we want to teach you Sumo as thoroughly as possible, there's also a lot of power in creating these queries that might help you later and having the system automatically alert you when something's not right or is right, depending on the case. And so we'll talk about all these throughout the day. Let me go through this slide quickly, not too quickly, but this is the slide around collection. So as mentioned earlier, your data needs to be collected and brought into Sumo Logic. What I'm trying to show here is at the top center of the screen, the Sumo Logic Cloud, that cloud icon that we all know that represents really the destination for your data. So you need to get your data into the Sumo Logic Cloud. Now, how do you do that? Well, it depends a little bit on where the data is in the first place. On the right-hand side of the screen, we're looking at newer technologies, cloud-based properties, AWS, Azure, GCP, etc. On the left-hand side, we have older technologies, things that are sitting behind firewalls, generating local files, host metrics, syslog data, etc. Once again, all the data needs to be brought into Sumo Logic. But based on where it is going to impact a little bit of how it's brought in. On the right-hand side of the screen, with these cloud properties, you're going to use what's called a hosted collector. Basically, it's a collector, a little agent app that we host or we own, that you're basically going to give credentials to. So you're going to say, on my behalf, I grant Sumo Logic the ability to grab my AWS data. We grab the AWS data and we bring it into the Sumo Logic cloud. On the left-hand side of the screen, those properties, you can actually typically install a collector in those environments, since they're typically not ephemeral, they're typically up and running. You can actually install a little agent that will grab the data and send it over. The end result is the same. Data still comes into Sumo Logic. It just depends, do you use the installation wizard or not? And that's about as deep as we'll get onto it for today. Yeah, that's probably as deep as we need to go for right now. We covered this in the Sumo Logic administration class, where we will actually install the collector together. I'd encourage you to take that if that's interesting to you. But for today, this is high level enough. One more thing, I keep jumping that slide. One more thing I want to talk about here before we get to the labs is metadata. Metadata is not uniquely a Sumo Logic thing. It's everybody uses it. Well, not everybody, many people or organizations use it. The way we use it is as a tag or to label the log messages that get collected. So when these log messages are ingested or collected, they are going to get tagged with data for many reasons. One of the main reasons is to help you locate your data, so that when you want to look for your data, you can provide a shortcut name to find it, I guess is a way to say it. Now, by default, the top, the ones listed on here that are not in bold are automatic, actually in bold as well, are automatically applied. So the name of the collector gets automatically applied to your data. Now, that may be a helpful way for you to locate your data, but it may not be. In regards to collectors, some customers have one collector, some customers have 10,000 collectors, and that's fine. There's no charge for collectors. But there's many different reasons why you might want to set it up one way versus another. What we want to do is provide a way that you or an administrator could configure your data and make it easier to locate. And that's where we came up with, or where we use, source category. And so source category we're going to use today. We're going to use probably the set of data that's mentioned here, labs, Apache Access. But where this is helpful is it starts to provide some structure to your data. So if I tell you that later today we're going to use lab Apache Access data, this tells you right away that this is lab data versus production data versus QA data versus development data. It's giving you an indication of environment. It's Apache data. It's not O365 data. It's not AWS data. It's Apache data. It's giving you specifics on the name or the type. And then it's Access Apache data, so specifically Apache Access data. And so this is meant to make it easier for you to locate your data. This is also a feature that we cover in the administration of these naming conventions of how to set this up. So if you're an admin and want to set these names up, we'd encourage you to take that class, or at least look at our best practices. All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to get into the lab environment. So let me go ahead and just paste these into the chat real fast. So what we're going to do is we're going to all log in together. The website is service.sumologic.com, which you may be familiar with, you may not be. Either way, that's the website. The email that we're going to use today is going to be training plus analyst number. And for number, I want you to select a 3-digit number. So maybe you want to be training analyst 007. Maybe you want to be training plus analyst 351748. Pick a 3-digit number. So it's going to be training plus analyst number at sumologic.com. And then log in with the password of holiday21 ! So go ahead and get logged in. If you need any help, of course, let us know. Once you get logged in, if you can put your 3-digit number in the chat, so we just know you got successfully logged in. If there's overlap in the 3-digit numbers, it doesn't really matter for today. We have a pretty small group, and it just doesn't really matter. So that's okay. Yeah, so go ahead and get logged in. And once again, any questions, let us know. These credentials, as you're finding out if you haven't already, are going to give you access to the training environment. You'll have access to these credentials after today. You'll actually have credential access for the next, through about January 3rd is when I'll change them next. To go again and logged in, looks like somebody's having a problem copying credentials. There may be an issue with copying out of the chat. You are going to select the 3-digit number, Naveen. So you pick any 3-digit number you want. And I'm actually going to get logged in here as well. So let me do so. So I am going to do 234. If somebody else is doing 234 as well, that's not a problem. All right, so hopefully you're getting logged in. Once again, if you need help, please shout. Many of you, this may be the first time you've logged into Sumo. So let's do not a quick tour, a tour. So when you first get logged in, this is the page you should be brought into. If you're getting a message about your account is locked, just go ahead and try a different 3-digit number. It's possible somebody messed around with it a little bit. But what you get here is a pretty traditional homepage. At the top of the screen, it's going to show you things that you've recently accessed. Now, you may not have accessed them recently, but keep in mind if somebody else has logged in with this account at a previous training session, that's why they show up. So this isn't the first, it may be the first time someone's used this account, it may not be. In the center of the screen, you have the ability to do things, and we're going to look at some of these things today. There's a lot of things, so we can't do all of them today. We're really going to be doing primarily just a log search today. You have recently so recently opened, recently run, recommended. So as you do with many other apps, when you log in, we want you to get up and running as quickly as possible. The black bar here, I'll probably talk about it in a few minutes because we'll use it here, but you should see a black bar. If you don't, it might be hidden by the 3 horizontal lines. Go ahead and just kind of open that and close it just to get familiar with it. Yeah, let's keep going here. The Learn tab. Learning is good. That's why we're here today. So the Learn tab is going to contain ways to learn more about Sumo Logic. We have videos, we have documentation, we have a community portal, and I'll go into some of this all a little bit later as well. But what I want to do here is open up the hands-on labs for fundamentals. So what I want us to do is go to Home, or probably on Home automatically, go to Learn, go to Hands-on Labs Fundamentals, and select Lab 1 Viewing Data. It should open up to this page. I'm going to take this page and actually paste it into the chat. So if you want to go ahead and use that link that I'm sending to get to the labs, that's fine as well. But I did want to show you how to get to them just so you know how. The certification tab we're going to use a little bit later when we take the exam. But like I said earlier, I'll talk about that when we get closer to it. So for now, what I want is you to have Sumo Logic open and the lab open. And so I'll go ahead and just wait a few moments. If you need help, please let us know. That's why Suresh is here. That's why we're here all together. So we want to make sure that you're able to join in. And also, if you can't join in or you don't want to, you can just kind of sit back and watch, where this will be, unable. This will allow you to just view what's going on, so you still can participate. All right, so I'm going to continue. You can log in too with the same credentials. If it's showing you to verify your credentials, I would just try another set, a different number. Yeah, it should work. And it looks like some of you are having some issues copying the links. I apologize for that. I think that's a Zoom setting. All right, so let's go ahead and let's start here. So let's go ahead and start with lab 1. And once again, any question, or put them in the chat. But let's start with lab 1. Now, the scenario we want to have you use is the one that you're facing right now. You have access to a new system. What do you do? Where do you start? Well, that's what we want to go ahead and kind of explore now. So the first thing we want to do is sign in, and that is an important step. And so I know most of us are in. If you are having some issues, but I think we're getting there. But the next thing we want to do is to see what data is available. So we now have access to the system, exactly as it says, what data is available. So let's go ahead and see what data is available. Now there's two ways to do this, and you're going to find in Sumo Logic there's usually two ways to do the same thing. There's often more than two ways to do the same thing, but that is a part of Sumo Logic. It's a good thing that there's multiple ways to do things, but there are. So what we want to do here is we want to go ahead and go to the black bar. If the black bar is hidden, click on the three horizontal lines in the top left. And then what we want you to do is go down to Manage Data and select Collection. Now, what you should be viewing now is the collection screen. These are all those collectors that I referred to earlier that have been set up. They may be working, they may not be. We'll talk about that in a moment, but this is showing all of them. It's possible in the real world that you may not have access to this. This feature and many other features we're going to look at, well, really this feature, an administrator could turn off. So this, you might not be able to do this in your production environment, but for today, we want to show you how. So as I mentioned here we're seeing just all these different sets of data. We see observability data, we see lab data. What we can do here is Apache data is the example that we're going to be using a lot today. So I could say, is there any Apache data in here? And there is, or there should be. Yeah, here it is. And so this is the set of data that we're going to use today. And basically we've now identified that data using our collectors. Now, what I'm going to do here is do the same thing, but I'm going to do it through a query. So let's say I don't have access to that managed data collection screen. How can I see what data has been collected? Well, this is how. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the top of the screen. I'm going to go to the plus new icon, and I'm going to select log search. And now I'm in that log query screen. And now I can create a query to search. Now, in this case, we're going to provide you with a query. You can create your own if you want, but we have one here for you already to use. And so I'm going to grab this query. So here's the query. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it. And I'm going to run it. When I run it, it's automatically running for the last 15 minutes. That's going to be customizable, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And what it's doing here is it's running this query first, and then this query second. This query first is just a star. And so what that represents is grab everything, grab all the data. I don't care if it's Apache data. I don't care if it's O365 data. I don't care if it's Travelogic data. Grab all my data for the last 15 minutes. And what I see here are just about 1 million log messages. Now, when I click search here, and what this did for you probably, it took you to this aggregates tab. What this aggregates tab is showing us here is the second line. The second line is saying, grab all the data and then count by source category. So take all that data and count by source category and group them together. And so what I now see here are different source categories and the amount of log messages for each one from the last 15 minutes. If I click on the count column, I can sort it from high to low or low to high. And what I now see here is the most dominant or the largest set of data was my Kubernetes mobile banking data. The second largest data is my lab VMware data. The third largest is also some banking data. This is more payment data, and so on and so forth. And I can see on here, I kind of have to look for a little bit, but if I was curious about lab Apache Access data, I see right here that it's the 38th most common set of data. And over the past 15 minutes, there's been 7,000 log messages. And so in that respect, I've kind of used, I've used the query to do two different things. All right, let's see. Okay, so in this case, as described, we've now seen the type of data. And so as it says here, suppose we're interested in log messages for Apache Access. We now have started to recognize the Apache Access data is important to us. Now let's say this data is good, but I want to see what other data people have accessed or what other dashboards people have created. And so what I want to do here is I specifically want to look for shared dashboards. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back into Sumo and I'm going to go to this icon on the far, well, it's on the far left, but it's on the right of the far left is this library icon. When I click on it, what it's going to show me or give me access to is the library. Anything that somebody else has shared with me or shared with the public, depending on how they shared it. And so what I can do here is I can see, is there any Apache Access data that might be relevant here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my library. I'm going to search for Apache Access. I might actually have a lot of things in here, but I'm going to grab, really doesn't matter which one here. I'm going to grab this overview that Lee made. Now this one's not working. I'm going to grab this other one here. I meant to do, where's the overview? Oh, here it is, sorry. So what I'm doing here is seeing other things that people have created. I don't know if what they've created is helpful or not. That's what I want to check. So here, for example, is a Apache overview that John Meredith has created. Is this helpful to me or not? I don't know. And it is helpful to me, but it's allowing me to start to look and see what other people have done. And so what I see here is John has created a map. He's created some response times, some status codes. And once again, this might be helpful, it might not be, but we want you to look at what other people have done, because if they've already done the work you need to do, don't do the same work. So, there's a benefit in sharing the information. Now, what I want to do next is go ahead and utilize our apps. This is a really cool feature of Sumo. What we're going to do is we're going to do this together. These apps, we call them apps. You might think of an app as something else, but what we mean by apps are queries and dashboards that we think are going to be helpful for you for a source of data. So let's go ahead and look at this a little bit closer, because that explanation was not very good. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into Sumo Logic and I'm going to go to the app catalog. And what I see in the app catalog are about 200 or so different sources of data and dashboards and queries that can help me with those sources of data. So I see things scrolling through here. I see, Docker information. I see one login, Okta. Basically, these apps have been formatted to look at that source of data and provide insight into that. And so let's go ahead and utilize one of those right now. The app we're going to use is called Apache. It's going to be represented by this Apache with a feather. Apache Tomcat is something else. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the Apache icon and I'm going to click Add to Library. When I do, I'm going to need to give the app a name. I technically really don't even need to do this step. I will, because if somebody else has already named this Apache, then it becomes a problem. So I'm just going to call it Apache 234 -12, just to throw some numbers in there. And now what I'm going to do is put the source category. Where is my Apache data? Well, it's in lab/Apache/access, as I've seen and the lab tells us. And what I'm going to do is click Add to Library. At this point, the system is going to take these queries and dashboards that somebody at Sumo has created, reference our lab Apache Access data, and give us the output of it. And so now, for example, if I go to Apache Overview, I now see all this hopefully or potentially helpful stuff about Apache data, and I didn't really have to do anything to get it. These apps, we encourage you to use these apps anytime you load new data into the system or it's new to you. Is this app 100% going to give you exactly what you need? Not necessarily, but it is going to give you a pretty good indication of what's possible with the data. And so here we see that there's other apps that have loaded. There's the Apache overview, but I can also go ahead and take a look at my specifically related to logs. I can look at visitor location. And what this is now showing me is visitor location on a worldwide scale, on a United States scale. And of course I could, modify this for any country or region. And now I'm starting to see, over time, what regions did people come from? So the app's really just a good feature in Sumo Logic. I guess all features are good in Sumo Logic, but this is really an easy one to get to implement and start to use. Now, in the scenario that we're going through here, I do want to go through one last step, which is sharing this. So in the scenario, let's imagine we've created this dashboard, this app. We didn't do much to do it, but we did create it. And what I want to do is now, let's say I want to give this to my manager, because my manager has been asking me about worldwide visitor locations, and he or she, wants to know this information. What I can do here is I can go ahead and actually, there's a few different ways to do this. Ultimately, I can go to my folder and I can choose to share. And then I can just decide, who do I want to share this with? Do I want to share it with my entire organization? Do I want to share it with just other administrators? Do I want to share it with Pablo? He's been working with me. He's been working with me on this project, and I can then include a message. Hey, y'all, this graph is, I don't know, helpful, something like that. And then I can go ahead and click share, and they will send them a message with that. So I wanted to show that. I think it's a pretty good way to kind of wrap up lab 1. Let's see, there's a question. We're going to learn queries to search logs. So we're actually going to go into that in just a moment in lab 2, but we're not going to go super deep. So for today, we're going to go kind of like we did surface level for collectors. We're going to go surface level for queries, but we do have another class called Search Mastery, which I'd encourage you to take, which goes over the query language in more details. But what we're going to go over next is, it's pretty detailed-ish, sort of detailed-ish. All right, so let's see. Why don't we, what time is it? I think we're still, oh, the share options. Let me just show this one more time. There's a question about that. So with the share options, I can either go to the entire folder, or this is just the specific thing I want to share, and then decide the users and the roles. I can get more specific in here. So I can say, I want my administrators to only have view access, my trainees, other access. I can specify that. And then I'd encourage you to add a note. And so that way an email gets sent to somebody, and you're basically encouraging them to use these graphs or these dashboards. All right, let's go ahead and let's start lab 2. So lab 2 is, as just mentioned and eagerly anticipated, is going to be searching for using search queries. So once again, not getting deep, I could do a 10-hour class on query language. So trying to do it in about 15 minutes is what we're doing here, but this will still give you, some start. So let's go ahead and look at this. So what we have here is we actually have a query that we're going to use. So we're not actually going to create one now because just learning, I think it's best. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this query and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to go back into Sumo and I'm going to do a new log search. And I'm going to paste the query in. Now for this query, the system wants me to choose the last 60, or not the system, the lab wants me to choose the last 60 minutes. And let's talk about that functionality. Query language is not case sensitive. So when I do a query, by default, it's going to be set to the last 15 minutes, which is good, but I can change it. And I can change it, like I mentioned, in Sumo many different ways. So let's just go ahead and look at this very quickly. I can change the times based on these relative time periods. So what these are just common time periods. So last 60 minutes, I could select last 60 minutes, last 24 hours, so on and so forth. I can use the custom option. This gives me more of a calendaring-like feature to really specify time periods. So I could say, show me data from December 7th through December 13th, and from midnight to, I don't know, 6 a.m. or whatever it might be. The other thing I can do, though, is when I select the last 15, or when the last 15 minutes was selected by default, you notice there's this syntax of minus 15M. When I change it to the last 60 minutes, it's minus 60M. So I can use that. If I wanted to go ahead and search for the last 84 minutes worth of data, I could do 84M. Whoop. Sorry, without the typos, 84M. And so this is one way, or multiple ways, that we can start to look at different sets of data. Let's see, a couple questions about the query language, which is great. The query language, and I'll share some links shortly. Yeah, as Suresh is saying, you have access to material. It's very SQL-esque. So if you know SQL, you're going to know Sumo pretty well. Even if you don't, you'll still be okay, but it's very heavy on Sumo, SQL. And so speaking of that, let's look at this statement here of the query we did. What we have here is a very simple, it's not even SQL, it's just a very simple statement where we're doing an end statement. So what we're saying here is look for the lab Apache access data from the last 60 minutes. And of that data, look for the word get. And then in the results, only show me those sets of data or those log messages that have the word get in it. When that's done, I now see that there should be 43,000 log messages, and yours might be higher or lower, give or take. It doesn't really matter. And then what I see down below are the log messages. So for each log message, I'm going to see the time and really the timestamp that's been extracted from the log message. And I'm going to see the log message itself here. And I'm going to see the word get highlighted. So get, and the next 40,000 messages have the word get also. And I'm going to see 25 per page. The other thing I see here is this histogram at the top of the screen. This may be helpful, it may not be, probably not, but it's still going to show up. What it's doing is it's taking the data and kind of exploding it out. Basically, it's taking the past hour and breaking it out into 1-minute chunks. And so what I see here is that from 8:28 to 8:29, there were 723 messages. From 8:29 to 8:30, there were 470 messages, so there were less. Sometimes this visual component of the histogram is really helpful. Sometimes it's not. So you can hide it. It does kind of come back and reappear, but you can get it out of the way for a little bit. And then, like I mentioned, you have the log message down here. All right. Now let's get into the log message itself. Now the log message we're using are Apache access data. I haven't really, I've referred to them, but I haven't gone into detail in them. I'm going to go to a small detail or a low level detail right now. So what is Apache access data? What is this data showing us? What this data is web server data or web traffic. So when you go to a website, this is the transaction or the log message of your transaction of what you visited. So for example, on this first line here, we see at this time, somebody went to this component of our website from Greylock, and we see some other stuff in there. And I'm going to refer to it kind of as stuff right now. I'm going to get into it a little deeper, but basically we see stuff in here. Now, what's some of the stuff we see in here? Here, for example, we see an IP address. At the front of every Apache access message is going to be an IP address. What else do I see in here? What I see here is a 3-digit number. Many times it's going to be 200, but you might have seen this number as I'm trying to find one here. It's not going to show up. A 404. What this number is showing us is the status code or the result of you visiting that website. So when you went to the website, was your transaction successful or not? If you get a 200, that means you went to the website and got the component that you requested. All is good. When you go to a page and you get a file not found or a page not found, what status code do you think shows up? Well, it's the one you've probably seen before of a 404. So this status code is helpful to us to help us understand, did the person get to this website successfully? And if not, Why not? Was it a server error? Was it a client error? Was it a 404? Was it a 403? Was it a 304? And these numbers help us. We're not going to go too much deeper with the numbers, but that's just what we want you to notice. So what I want to do now is I want to introduce parsing. I right here recognize this as a status code. And now you will too. This status code is always going to show up right after this HTTP/1.1 quote. There's always going to be a space, and then there's always going to be a 3-digit number. And now if I tell you for this log message right here, what was the status code, you very easily visually see that as 200. Now here's the trick, or not the trick, but here's what we need to do next. We need to get the system to identify that as a status code. How do I get Sumo to recognize this as a number, as a status code? It sees it as a number, or really it sees it as just not even digits, just characters. What we want to do is we want to parse our data here. Once again, this is going to be a spot where there's many ways to do this step. The way we're showing you here is probably the most, not the most difficult way. It's probably the longest way to do it, but we wanted to show it to you just from an education standpoint. But there's better ways to handle this, but let's go through these steps because I think they're helpful. So what I'm trying to show here is that every log message follows a standard format for Apache and for 365 and other sources of data. But for Apache Access, every log message is going to have the IP address. It's going to have a space. It's going to have a dash. It's going to have a space. It's going to have another dash. It's going to have a space. It's going to have a bracket. In that bracket is going to be time, minutes, hours, seconds, the whole thing, time zone. Then there's going to be space. Then there's going to be quote get, and then there's going to be something, and so on and so forth. What we're going to do now is we're now going to go through those pieces and have the system identify them. So how do we do that? Well, this is what we're doing in the lab. What we're going to do is we're going to highlight a portion of the log message. It doesn't really matter which log message because they all follow the same format, but we do want to highlight the appropriate portion of the log message. The appropriate portion we want to highlight is from the word get, specifically the quote. And what I'm doing now is just holding my finger on the mouse and dragging across the screen. And I want to highlight through this, what we recognize as a domain or a URL. So I want to highlight that much. If I didn't highlight that much, it's probably just easier to cancel and re-highlight it again. And once I have that highlighted, I'm going to right click on the highlighted portion and I'm going to choose parse selected text. When I do, I should have this screen pop up. Once again, if I don't, probably easier just to redo the query. Now, what I'm going to do here is now identify those portions I just identified to you via the system and via the UI. So for example, in between get and in between HTTP1 is going to be something. What I'm going to do is highlight that something, that whole portion, and I'm going to click to extract this value. And now that something is going to turn into a star. When I do that, I'm now going to go down below into my fields and decide what do I want to call that field. I can call it anything I want. It has to be one word or no spaces, but I'm going to call it a URL. I'm going to put a comma because I'm going to do another one of these. Next, I'm going to highlight this 3-digit number because this HTTP/1.1 quote is always going to be there. I want to look for the space and then I want to look for the 3-digit number. Click to extract this value and it should turn into a star. And now I'm going to do comma. I can call this whatever I want. I'm going to call it SC for right now for status code. I'm going to highlight this 4-digit number here. This 4-digit number is the size. So when I went to visit this website, how many bytes were transacted? In this case, 8,000 bytes. So I'm going to click to extract this value. And now I'm going to do comma size. And then finally, in between the quotes here, I'm going to grab this whole thing, this whole URL. Click to extract this value. I'm going to do comma. We're going to call that the referrer. So that's the page that the individual came from to get to our website. I should have 4 stars here. I should have 4 fields here. I'm going to click submit. If I don't have the correct number of stars and fields, the system will let me know. And so what I now have here is a parse statement. The system is now going to look at this data. It's going to look at the log message and say, can I find quote get? Yes, I can. Can I find HTTP 1.1? Yes, I can. The thing in between those two things is going to be called a URL. And so now when I click start or search, these fields should be parsed out for me. And now the system should know what each field is and what the values are. And so what I see here, and I'll go through this again, is now from this log message, we have a refer and we have a size or a status code, excuse me, and we have a size and we have a URL. And now we could say, show us all the status codes that are whatever, and we'll go down that path in a moment, but that's where we're headed. So let's go back to the parsing just once again. So at a higher level, what we're doing is we're telling the system we want it to identify these fields. I'll turn this off. Let me just delete this, I'll redo it. And so what we're looking for is commonalities within the log message. What is not going to change in the log message and what is going to change? In this case, the get is always going to be there. So I can rely on that get acting as an anchor. This portion in between here is going to be different. In this case, it's a PDF. In the other case, I think it was an about us file. It could be a JPEG, excuse me. So this is going to change. So we're going to highlight it to extract this value. Now, what do we want to call that thing that shows up right there? We can call it anything we want, but that's going to be that URL because that's what it is. It's a URL. Now, there's always going to be the HTTP 1.1. And so now we can highlight this. If we ever get a log message that has an HTTP/2.1 here, for example, this parse statement would not work, but we're relying on the fact that it's going to be static in that way. Next, we're going to highlight that 4-digit number, click to extract the value, and we're going to call that the size because that's what that 4-digit number represents. Next, the quotes are always going to be here, but what's inside is going to change. And so we're going to highlight that portion, and we're going to call that a refer. But once again, we can call it anything we want, just that's what it is. Then we click submit. The parse statement is now provided here. We could have actually typed the parse statement like this is without using the UI. Well, once again, many ways to do the same thing. There's ways to implement these parse statements on the back end, which is something we strongly encourage. We just don't really go through it in this class. But there's, like I said, other ways to do this. Then when we click search, the system's going to look at the message. It's going to try to parse out those fields. And when it does this successfully, it's going to display the message and those fields parsed out. And now the system knows what these fields are. Now we can start to use them. And that's what we're going to do next. Let's go back here. Let me just make sure that we're done with this lab. We're not, so I'm glad I checked. The next thing we want to do here is save the search. Sounds like a minor thing, and maybe it is, but we want you to save it. So a couple things about saving searches. Your tabs will persist. Actually, I take that back. You can decide if you want your tabs to persist when you log out of Sumo and log back in. I'd encourage you to leave them so that they do persist, but that shouldn't take the place of saving. And so what we want to do here is go ahead and save. So very simply, we're going to go through the 3 dots and we're going to click Save As. You may notice when you do a new search, it automatically gets a name. So it's Cert 6, Cert 7, etc. We can use that name, or we can just call it, something more familiar. In this case, I'm going to call it parsing. Yeah, parsing just because, and then click Save. Once I save it, if I go back to my personal folder over here, I should now see it. All right, let's see. Let's see one question. Very good question, or it's really more an observation than a question. The parsing here, let me show. So in this case, we parsed asking for a URL, status code, in this order. The system does parse it or bring the results back in alpha order. You can return the results. You can do a reorder. I just don't do that here, but it's a good observation to note that they don't put them in the order that you requested. And we could debate whether they should or not, but they don't. So, but you can do the reorder. It's just called reorder. All right, let's see. Yeah, I guess that's good here. So why don't we take a little break now? Why don't we do it? Let's do a 15-minute break now, if that's all right. So we'll start it now. I'll put on a little timer here. And then we'll come back. We'll do a few more labs, as you'll see, and certainly feel free to kind of go ahead on the labs if you'd like, although no real reason to do. And then we'll come back and we'll do the labs, and then we'll talk about the exam. So like I said, 15 minutes. Go ahead, take a break, get a beverage, get a snack. I'm going to step away to get all those things. But if there's questions, like I said, just post them. And when Suresh, Puniyam's back, great. We'll go ahead and answer those as well. So have a good little break, and we'll come back shortly and continue. So thank you, everybody. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Hopefully you had a good little break there. What we're going to do now is just continue. And so continue with the labs and take a look at the search query a little bit more. So what we're going to do in the next step is start to chart our data. And this is going to be where we start to take our data and manipulate it into something that might be more helpful. There was a question in the Q&A about taking the data and formatting it different ways. And so as quickly, so a couple things. What we're going to need to do is we are going to need to log back in. The timeout probably expired. So let's go ahead and log back into the training environment. So same credentials you were using previously. Let me go and put those in the chat. I apologize for that. I actually need to modify that timeout to be greater than 15 minutes. So let's go ahead and just log in again together. So use the same credentials you used previously. If you want to use new ones, it's fine, I guess. So what we did here is, and as quickly properly described in the question, we ran a query and it gave us basically our data back with groupings, basically columns. What we can do now, what we're going to start to do is start to utilize these columns or utilize these fields. And so what we can do is start to say, only show us where the status code equals 200, or only show us a status code where it equals 404 or something like that, and get more granular. And so we're going to do that now. Yeah, let's do that right now. So hopefully you got logged back in okay. And so now we're going to do lab 3. Now, the thing we're going to do first is use the aggregation. And this is going to start to get us into that, taking our data and not understanding it better, but presenting it better. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add this line to the query. And the line says pipe count by status code. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it. I'm going to go ahead and paste it in. To do a new line, I'm going to do Shift Enter and then paste. And so what you see here is we're starting to build our query. Our query is now 3 lines. We're using the pipe to represent breaks in lines. And so the query is going to work top down. So first, the query is going to go ahead and look for last 60 minutes worth of data, the Lab Apache data that has the word get in it. So it's going to pull back all that data. Next, it's going to parse the data. So as we saw earlier, it's going to take those fields and define them. And then what we're going to do now is count by status code. And so now what we're doing is we're taking all of our status codes, since the system now knows what a status code is, and aggregating them. Aggregation is just a presentation format of the mathematical data. So anytime we do any math, and counting is math, basic math, but it's still math, we see the results in here. So now what we see is for our status codes, all the different status codes that are represented over the past 60 minutes and how frequently they show up. And so now we see 200 is the primary status code, which is good. That's what we want to see. We see there's 888 404s. Well, that's not good. And now we're starting to see those different things. And yes, actually, so the variable SC should be used here. There's a reason it worked. I'll talk about that in a moment. But yes, I actually should have used SC. The reason being is that's what I used up here. I should have done that there. All right, let me just go back to the lab. So we aggregate it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to introduce another operator called time slice. What a time slice operator is going to do, and kind of what it sounds like, is it's going to take our data and slice it into groups or buckets of time. To do so, we're going to grab the query line, copy it, jump into our query. We're going to do a Shift Enter. We actually want to put this on the 3rd line. Then after we have that on the 3rd line, what we do on the 4th line, we want to add count by time slice. So ultimately, we want our query to look exactly like it does on the example there. So either pasting that line in separately or together, it doesn't really matter. But let's go through what's going to happen here. We're going to get our data. Then the data is going to be broken out into time slices of 1 minute buckets, and then we're going to get the data presented. So let's see what that presentation looks like. So what we now see, this data is not formatted very well. We're going to format it shortly, but what we see now is for each time slice. So a time slice is this 1 minute period. So from 9:36 to 9:37, there were 6 401s. From 9:17 to 9:18, there were 3 500s. By default, this graph or this data is not in any order. It's not in time order or status or anything. You can put it in them. You can also sort it up here in the query itself, but by default, it's not put in any time order. Now, even if we do put them in time order, we can't really see much. So if we were interested in 404s, for example, we see at 8:39, there were 4 of them. We see at 8:40, there were 9 of them. We see at 8:41, there were 13 of them. Now, we might be able to see that they are increasing, but we can't, I don't really have a good visual there. You might, see those numbers increase. People view math and numbers in many different ways, but I need better explanation. I need these numbers, just more explanation for me. And a way to get more explanation is to transpose the data. I'm not actually really getting more information. I'm really just formatting my data. And transposing is a great way to do it. What transposing allows me to do is when I have data that has 3, I'm going to call them 3 dimensions. I don't know if I'm using that term properly, but we have a time component, we have a status code, and we have a count. So we have 3, and that's what I mean by 3 dimensions, 3 different data sets, whatever. What we can do is we can use this transpose operator to turn that into a look and feel of Excel, where we have rows, we have columns, and then at the cross intersection are those values. And so what I'm going to do here on the next line is copy that transpose. When I do the transpose, I need to give a row and a column name, define them, and that's what I've done here. And then click search again. What it's doing now is it's taking the aggregated data that I have and just, once again, reformatting it. So now here I have my times. Here I have my status codes. And then at the intersections, I have the values. So here I can now see the 404s go from 1 to 19 to 8 to 19. I can start to see they go up, they go down. Now, whether or not I can visually see that as well, we can take this a step further using charts, but that's where we're at right now with the data. Now let's go ahead and create a chart. Creating a chart is very simple in Sumo, especially if you're in the aggregates tab. When you're in the aggregates tab, by default, it's going to put you in this tabular or table view. But to view a chart, you click on a chart. So do you want to view a bar chart, a column chart, a line chart, a pie chart, so on and so forth. Well, not so on and so forth. That's really, I guess, the few options you have, but you do have all those options available to you. Now I'm going to choose a line chart. You can choose a bar chart, doesn't really matter. I guess I should choose a bar chart since that's what we're telling you to use in the next step. But now let's go through this next step, and we're going to use, as the question kind of was mentioned earlier, we're going to start to filter some of our data out here. Now, what do we want to filter out here? What I want to filter out here, or why I want to use the filter here, is this graph is good, but it's also hard to read. These values of 200s, these blue lines here, very easy to read. I see it goes up, I see it goes down, I see it goes up, it goes down. I visually see that, no problem. These purple lines here representing 304s, there's less of them, but I can still kind of see it goes down, up, down, I can still kind of see that in there. But these other values down here, they're just really kind of smushed. There's a lot less of these values. They're less frequent status codes, but they're still occurring. And so how can I go ahead and kind of zoom in on those, just focus on those that I can't see very well? Well, once again, 2 ways to do something in Sumo. One way is I can use the dashboard legend here, and I can say, don't show me 200s, don't show me 304s. And by clicking on them, I'm turning those off. And now since I've turned those values off, everything else is adjusted to scale. And now I can more, visually hopefully, maybe not, but probably have a visual, better experience in seeing the peaks and valleys of things. But the other way we can handle this is using a where statement. Remember, I mentioned this is very SQL-esque. So what I can do is I can take this where statement and plug it in. I need to plug it in below this line, because in this line, we're telling the system how to define a status code. And what we're saying on this line is now look for those status codes of 200 or 304 and don't include them. That's what an exclamation is acting as. It's a not, basically. So we're basically saying grab us everything but 200 or 304s. When we run this, now we don't even get those 200 and 304s included in our results because we've asked the system to exclude them. Both ways get you to the same place, but different ways to approach it. So do you want to just turn it off in the legend, or do you want to use the where statement that we just provided? That's why we wanted to show you both ways to handle it. And so that's really about it that we're going to do for query language. As mentioned, that we have a search mastery course, which I'd strongly encourage you to take if this is interesting to you. And that class is 3 hours, and that could go a lot longer as well. But operators are, certainly an important portion of Sumo. So hopefully this did kind of interest you in getting more knowledge. But for now, let's go ahead and assume that was enough knowledge on the query language. And now what we're going to do is take our dashboard and do something with it. So in this case, we've now created a dashboard. And actually, technically, we've created a panel. Some people will call this a dashboard. At this point, it's really a panel of data. Now, how do we add this panel to a dashboard? Well, that's what we're going to do in Lab 4. So in Lab 4, we're going to click the button that says Add to Dashboard. We're going to name this panel if we want, and we would want to give it something that is illustrative in its name. So I'm going to call it Apache status codes. And now I'm going to select dashboard. In this case, I want to utilize a new one. So I'm going to create one. I'd recommend using your initials and then, some numbers like I'm doing here. I'm going to copy it just so I remember what it is. And I'm going to click create new dashboard. Now here I am going to select the option to use, or I'm going to deselect this option. I want to use the old style. So I don't want to create it in the new dashboard UI. I want to use the old one. Really just more for demo purposes here. The new one is better, it's new, but for here, one of the query lines doesn't work and I haven't rewritten it. So I'm just going to use the old version and now click add. And now what I should have is a true dashboard with my panel. Now from here, you can modify some features of the dashboard. Adding a text panel is a good idea, or at least good idea that we show you it. So if I go to more actions up here and go to panel, I can do title or text. This is a helpful. And possibly provide some context or some instructions or whatever might be helpful in there. This dashboard, you're going to but we're going to share it with somebody else. And so that's why we want to make sure that it's illustrative and understandable. You don't want to send this to somebody and have them not know what this is. Let's give them as much information as possible. We can also change the look and feel of this. So we can start to drag things around. We can make them larger. Once again, all just to make it best for you. Maybe you always keep the notes on the far right, you can go ahead and do so. The other feature that's really helpful is toggling the theme. It not just because it's an important feature, it changes it to a dark theme versus a light theme. And so I just find this is easier to read. Let's see what else in here. And then the last steps in here are, once again, sharing this out. So the idea is I've now created this. This is valuable information for me. Maybe it's valuable information for somebody else in my organization. And so what I can do is choose to share this dashboard. And like I was starting to show earlier, I can share it with the entire organization. I can just share it with Akash, whatever I want to do. And then what type of access do I want them to have? All right, cool. So let's keep going. Really, one or two more labs here. This next one is modifying your dashboard. And I haven't shown, well, haven't shown this yet intentionally so, but we're going to go through this now. And so what we want to do is we want to grab one of the dashboards that we created using the app earlier. So what I want us to do is go back to our personal folder, go back to our app folder, and open up the Apache overview. And you should get something that looks pretty identical to this. Now here is my visitor location map. And so this is showing me over the last 60 minutes, worldwide visitors to our website, which is good. Good information. There it is. I just tilted it. Oh, you can zoom access. It's weird. Okay, didn't know you could do that, but that's a little feature. Now this map is great, but you know what? I being based in the US, I am US centric. And so I want to modify my data to only show US data. How do I do that? Well, that's what I'm going to show you right now. The dashboards do get refreshed automatically. You can also kind of force them, but they do get refreshed every, I want to say minute, but I don't want to lie. I think it's every minute. But if Poonam knows, feel free to correct me. So this map here, how do I modify this to the US? Well, one of the first things I want to show you here is the ability for you to just view this information of how this map was created, because you might be thinking, how was this map created? By going to, sorry, edit, there we go. Here is the query that was used to create this map. And this is a query that we actually look at in the Search Mastery class. So if you want to learn how to create maps, use this query or join the class. But what I want to do now is I want to modify this query. And so what I can do is I can say, you know what, I want to be US centric, just show me US data. How do I do that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this query line right here. What we're doing here in our query is using a lookup table. And we're not going to go much deeper on lookup tables. This is not very advanced, more advanced though. What we're doing is we're looking at the IPs, and the IPs are telling us where these people came from, or where these systems came from. I guess they don't have to be physical people. It's telling us the latitude and longitude. It's also going to tell us the country name that they came from. What I'm doing on this next line is I'm saying, just show me where country name equals the United States. I could say where country name equals, unfortunately, we don't have any India data, which is kind of weird actually. But I could say, show me where country name equals Japan. Show me where it doesn't equal Japan. Any of these filters. When I click search, now I'm just searching on US data. And what I can do now is I can now choose to update this dashboard. Basically, I'm updating this panel. And so now I'm saying, take that panel that I was just using of global data and rewrite it to the just show the US centric data. And now I just see my US. I can zoom in on the US. The data gets kind of down to street level, which is kind of cool. And maybe not that much lower level. But now I'm showing, you know, just what I requested. And so why we wanted to show you that is one, just because it was helpful, but also that's, so imagine if we go back to our dashboard. I guess this, I don't really want to use the visitor traffic again. Let me use something else. But now you can start to dig in to see how these queries were created. So here, for example, is this visitor access type. It's showing us what type of OS people were using to visit our website, which is all data that was in that log message. If you want to see how that's really done, here's how it's done. It's basically, once again, parsing a portion of the log message and pulling out that portion as the OS. All right, cool. So that completes lab 5. Now let's go ahead and take a look at lab 6. This is a good way to kind of start to wrap things up. Lab 6 is creating an alert. Now, this is creating an alert, but I'm going to modify the definition of what we mean by an alert, because this is not necessarily what you might expect. So I'm going to show you what we're trying to show you here, and then I'm going to show you a better way to handle this. But let me go ahead. Let me show you what's occurring here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that visitor location panel. If I can still find it, visitor location. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the map like I did earlier. So I'm going to go to open in search. Actually, I didn't do that earlier. Earlier, I did edit. This time I am going to go to open in search. So what I want to do is I want to go back to the map. It doesn't matter which one, and choose open in search. And when we do that, as you now see, takes the information and brings it back to that query screen. And so here's the query, here's the filter for time, here's the original messages, here's the charting option, so on and so forth. Now what I can do here is I can save this, and I showed you how to do that earlier by going to the three dots and going to save as. When I save it though, I also have this option down here of schedule this search. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click it here. I just want to verify that that's how we're still showing you how to do it. I'm going to click it here. What I'm now going to decide is how frequently do I want this query to run? Every 15 minutes, every hour, every 6 hours, daily, custom cron, whatever. I'll do every 15 minutes just to get this thing going. And then what's going to happen is every 15 minutes, this search is going to run. And then it's going to send me the results of this search. So every 15 minutes, I'm going to get a query with a map that has, over the 15 minutes, this is where these people came from. And I can choose to have that as an email. I can choose to Slack it, like I mentioned earlier. There's other options for different alert mechanisms. And then I can click save. Now, it's not the problem here. What this is doing is we're calling this create an alert. But in reality, what we're getting is a scheduled report, because every 15 minutes, we're going to get a report that looks very similar to this right here. Now, in my mind, that's not really an alert. That's a scheduled search. That's an important thing. It's a great feature of Sumo, but it's not truly an alert. What I want to show now is how to set up an alert in a true or more traditional sense of an alert. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, let me see, I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I'm going to try, let me see if this will work. What I want to do is I want to show you under is it managed data? Monitoring, excuse me, sorry. Under managed data and monitoring, we have a new feature called monitors. And this is going to allow me to set up, like I'm saying, more a traditional alert where I get notified when something happens or doesn't happen. So I just want to show this as a quick example. So what I'm going to do is going to add new monitor. First off, is this going to be related to logs or metrics? We've been primarily talking about logs today, but this could be metrics related. For today, I'm just going to do logs. I can put my query in here. And what I can do now is I can now start to decide when do I want to be alerted? And what do I want to be alerted on? For example, here I could, let's see, I could go ahead and I could do the country name here. Country name equals United States. I don't know, something like that. So now I could have it alert me when there's a United States entry. I can also modify this using essentially counts or frequencies. So maybe I don't want to be alerted every time there's a US, but if 15 US entries show up within 5 minutes, that I want to know because I need to turn on some more servers. I also can do a warning versus a critical alert. So maybe I'm sending a warning at 5 or 6 and a critical at 15. For each type, whether it's a critical or a warning, I can choose the notification type. And I can choose the recipients. So I could send one to ops and one to security, or depending on what's helpful here. But this is really what we want to show you when you think of monitors or alerts. This is the new stuff. So I don't have a lab for it. I need to create a new one to replace the other one. But did want to show you both just just to show them, I think this one's better, so you should use it. All right, let's see. I think that's gonna, let's labs. Oh, the last lab is important in its own way. So lab 7 is all about getting help. And so what we want to do is provide many ways for you to get help. I've pointed out some of these already, but going to just point out a few more here. So certainly, let me get out of that. When you go to home and go to learn, many great tools for help right off of here. So there's labs, videos, documentation. Documentation is going to be really important for you, and I'm going to describe it in more detail when we get to the exam, but our documentation is very good and should be used. And I say that coming from a company where documentation was not important, called Google. They don't care about documentation as much. Ours are really good, and so I'm going to show you the importance of using them in a few minutes with the exam. What else do we have in here? The cheat sheet. I should have pointed this out earlier. I don't know why I didn't. This cheat sheet here is a list of all the operators. So we looked at parser. I guess that's really the only one we use for the most part. This has all of them. So these are all the different actions you can do. And we cover many of these in that search mastery class. There's not all of them, but here's time slice as well. Let's see, what else do we have for you in here? Our community, just point that out real fast as well. So this community portal lets you chat with other Sumos as well as other Sumo users about different aspects of Sumo, and people ask questions and answers and all that. So just a way to collaborate, get help, more ways to get help. Let's see, let's go back to that lab. So the learn page, the posting a question. Oh, the customer Slack channel, of course, I should have mentioned this. So we have a Slack channel. So certainly invite you to join it and ask. Very similar to the community, just Slack versus a community interface. And then you can always log a support ticket, of course. So many different ways to get help. Let's see. So that primarily concludes the, let's just go back to the slides. Yes, that really concludes the content portion. We're going to talk about the exam now, so we'll get into that in just a moment. But certainly, any other questions that I can help answer? Let's see. There was a question about sending alerts on phone or making calls. So you can't send voice, but you can use. Yeah, you can't actually do it over voice. Well, there are some kind of hacky ways to do it, but with the alerts, let me just show this to you. Now, where is it set up? Oh, it's actually turned. Let me log in as just another account real fast. Yeah, hold on, let me just do this. So I'm sorry. I just wanted to show you a feature that you don't have access to, but will help answer some questions about the alerts. That's weird. Sorry about this. Let's see, was there a couple other questions? Let's see, a few other questions we can go through as well. So how to increase the timeout window? So that's a good question as well. What you're going to want to do there is you're going to want to go to the bottom left of your user, and I'll show you once I get through this. Here we go. All right, so let's see. So the one question was about the timeout. If I go down to my user and I click preferences, here's the timeout. So for yours, it's listed for probably 15 minutes. And so that's how to change it. Let's see. Oh, here's what I want to show. Where? I'm looking for something called connections. Where did it go? Oh, here it is, sorry. So in here, you have the ability to set up the different mechanisms for communication. So here we see webhooks are most common, Slack, Microsoft Teams. And so here's the list of different services you can interact with. And using text is not an option currently. Something we're talking about. I think you can do it kind of through PagerDuty though. Let's see. Uploading data for analysis. Not covered in this course, but I'll show you how easy it is. Basically, you would go to collection. Actually, this is probably the easiest way. You would go to collection and you go to setup wizard. And then what you can do here, I mean, you can watch little videos, but essentially you can just upload your log files. So what type of file do you want to ingest? What source category do you want to give it? And then what time zone? And then click next and it does it for you. So not something we covered today, but we just did. So that's how to do it. It's pretty easy. And then of course you can get more involved with the collectors themselves, but uploading is quite simple. Let's see, the frequency, the configure monitor alert with frequency. I think I covered that. Let me just show it to you again. Too many windows now. So the real best way to that is when you're in the monitoring. This is the portion here where you're starting to set those counts or occurrences that need to happen before the alert is triggered. So it could be something that does occur or doesn't. It could be you have 10 successful sales or not, or just different values in there. Let's see. There's a question about integration with Jira. I'm not going to go into it, but I think let me just see if we do have a help article. Yeah, we actually have a Jira app even. So integrating with Jira, we do it. So here's some access or information about it, but it's something we collect logs from the Jira app. So it looks to be pretty simple. Yeah, this is pretty easy. It looks probably worse than it is, but yeah, so bringing in Jira should not be a problem. All right, let's see, any other questions? I think we're good. All right, so let's talk about the exam now. What we're going to do now is we're going to take an exam. Now we're going to want to take this exam using our own Sumo Logic accounts. We all should have our own Sumo Logic account. We don't want to take this exam as training analyst 354 because we want to get credit for the exam, not the training analyst. That's going to be important. If that's a problem, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but that's where we want to head to. Now, the exam we're going to take is going to consist of 30 questions. It's going to be a multiple choice exam. You're going to have 60 minutes to take it. You're not going to need that much time, but you do have it allocated to you. So feel free to use it, of course. That's how much time you have. You need a 75 to pass. Now, this exam is an open resource exam, and this is probably the most important thing. One of the most important things certainly about the exam is its open resource, in that you can use the documentation. I want you to use the documentation. I want you to be able to rely on the documentation. So we use this as an example of that. In the real world, you have access to documentation when you run across a problem. And so for an exam, I think it's appropriate as well. And we could debate whether or not it is, but usually people like to use the reference material. So feel free to use any of the documentation, any of the labs we used. Feel free to do a Google search. That's perfectly fine. We want you to do all that for today. Now, to get to the exam, I'm going to show you the steps. I'll probably go through these a few times, so don't worry if you don't kind of get it the first time. But what I want to do first is I want to make sure that I log into my account. So I want to make sure I log out of the other one. So if I still see training analyst 374 down here, I want to make sure I click on it and I want to sign out, and then sign out with my personal or professional Sumo Logic account. Once I've done that, I want to go home, or I probably am brought home by default. And then I want to go to certification. Once I click on certification, then I want to click on get certified. I should at this point be brought to this screen. If I'm not, if I'm brought back to another screen, I'll show you how to get around those steps. So if you're being brought back to Sumo query screen or something weird, I'll show those steps in a moment of how to get to this spot. Now, once we're in here, we're in the right spot. This is our Learn portal, or our certification portal. As you see here, we keep the credentials. So in the future, if you want to see what our latest training credentials are, they're right here. We want to go into get certified because that's what we want to do. We want to get certified. So we want to select get certified. And then what we see in here are all the different certifications exams we have. Now, the one we're starting with should be the first one. It should be the fundamentals exam. So we want to look for this fundamentals exam with this ribbon, the blue color, and then click on that. We're going to select register for free. There's no charge for the exam for you or your employer or anybody. It's free for everybody. I'll go ahead and click start. When I click start, it's going to give me kind of the same guidelines I've mentioned already: 30 questions, 60 minutes to take it, passing score 75. I'm going to click next. And then I'm going to have the exam. So I'm going to select start assessment, and then I'm going to go through it. A lot of true, false, lots of multiple choice, etc. Once I'm done with the exam, I'm going to click next. And I'm going to get my score. Hopefully going to be a lot better than this score. Once I get my score, I am going to want to click submit. So I'm telling you, reminding you to click submit, because until I do, I don't really get credit for the exam. So until I click submit, then I get credit for the exam. And so once I click submit, now it's kind of official. Now, once I'm done with the exam, first, congratulations, you're now done with the exam. So you're now certified, you'll get a certificate. But what we want you to do as well, and I'll post this later again, is to send that certificate to us. So send it using your work email with your title to this email address. And within 48 hours, remember we're US based, so it might take a little longer. Although we've been pretty on top of them, we'll send you a $10 Swiggy voucher. Now, tomorrow, if you join us as well, you can take advantage of this promotion. So, potentially two meals are on us. So let's go ahead and start the exam. Certainly, I kind of expect there might be a few questions from what I just showed, but otherwise, let's start the exam. Once you're done, you're free to go. And hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow. So tomorrow we're going to be doing Cloud SIM Fundamentals, which is a very, very different interface. Yeah, very different, but really interactive as well. So I think you'll enjoy that. So yeah, otherwise, thank you for attending. Hope you enjoyed it. You can take the exams later. We want to encourage you to take them right now, but if you can't, because whatever reason, you're free to do them at a later point. And that's pretty much it. So let me just go back to a couple of the slides that I kind of alluded to. So this one I'm going to need. This one I wanted to show. So if when you log into Sumo, you go to the certified page, and when you click on certified, you get looped back not to the correct page. This is what you need to do. Go to help, go to community, and then an email should be sent to you shortly after. It might take a few moments. This is a weird it's an SSO issue. It's not related to Sumo. Well, it is related to Sumo, but not Sumo. It's really more about the testing platform. It's just an annoying issue. But if you're getting looped around, that's why, and this will fix it. So, like I said, I'll keep these posted for a few minutes. Yeah, other than that, yeah, pretty much it. I'm just I'll show you those last couple of things, and then I'll probably shut up. During these exam, I'll probably drop off, which is trying to get a little late here. You know, if you have any questions, Poonam, you gonna stick around for a little bit? Are you available for another half hour or so?
Yeah, I'm available.
Okay.
I will be here. Yep.
Cool. Perfect. So then, yeah, Poonam will be our helper for that one. So good. Yeah, I think we're all good. Let me put this other slide up. Like I said, I'll go ahead and put myself on mute, probably turn off my video as well and step away. But if there's any last minute questions, let us know. You know, not never too late. Otherwise, I hope to see you guys tomorrow. But thank you again for coming, and bye, everyone.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you. Team,
Thank you.
I would be here if you have any questions or queries. Feel free to reach out to me for some more time, and hope you are giving the exams. Yep. Ankit, I'm sharing my screen to help you out here. Can you see my screen? Ankit, you can just chat and say yes. Okay, so now when you go to this screen, this is the screen which you have received. Just click on Get Certified. Okay, it will take you to all the exams. Then click on Fundamentals and then register here free. Click here and then take it forward. Okay. Read this and then start. Okay. Oh, you are not able to see the first below 3 options. Strange. Ankit, can you share me your email ID? We will see at the back end if I can get that enabled tomorrow or day after tomorrow for you. Okay. And then you can take it exams. Okay, whoever faced this kind of issue, do send your email. I will just take a tab of this email IDs and send it across to you. Okay.